Hi everyone, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and today we are here to revisit my patchwork clutch tutorial. This design is unique in that the strap, the wristlet, is elasticized, and it's really fun to make because it uses small bits of fabric. So it's a great scrap buster. And for me, it's always been a way to incorporate some tiny pieces of the fabrics that I can no longer get that I really liked working with. So I'm just going to walk you step by step through this process. I will link to the original tutorial that inspired this new design down in the notes, and I am now creating design boards. So essentially that is a PDF that has all of the pattern measurements, really concise written instructions, and then a little bit of room for you to take some notes. And you can save those to your computer, you can print them, or you can collect them as we go forward into 2021. So I want to begin with the exterior of this project, which is going to be patchwork. And so for that, we're going to start by crafting the body panels. And so you're going to need two skinny pieces here that are 1.5 by 6 inches. And then two skinny pieces that are 1.5 by 4.5, and we're going to join those on the 1.5 inch side. So you just position those right sides facing, and then using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, go ahead and join those. And you'll repeat that process for both of those because we're going to go ahead and craft the front and the rear exterior panel at the same time. And then the base of that exterior measures 2.5 by 10, and you will cut 2 of those, and then in a third print you will cut 2 more pieces which are also 2.5 by 10. And so one is going to be joined on the top of this little skinny panel, and one is going to be joined on the bottom of the skinny panel. I'm going to go ahead and put the darker print along the bottom there. And you just position those 2.5 inch by 10 inch panels right sides facing on that skinny strip and stitch with the same 3/8. And when I'm joining fabric, I just actually line the edge of the fabric up with the edge of the foot, which is really close to 3/8 of an inch. So if you have a skinnier foot, go ahead and line it up with the edge of the foot. It's just easier to keep it straight. So that's what that looks like. And then I'm going to take that additional 2.5 by 10 and position it right sides facing closer to that skinny edge so that I can sandwich that skinny edge in the middle of this panel. And that's what the front and rear exterior panels will look like. I'm going to give this a good press, and I'm going to finish crafting the second panel. Okay, and then after you press your panels, you're going to want to cut out a like-size piece of quilt batting, and I have mine right here. And so then you're going to go ahead and position your exterior panels on top of that quilt batting, and then take that panel and fold it in half and slightly angle your corners there. You just want those bottom right and left hand corners to be angled just a bit. You're not going to take off very much. It's just a very slight angle and then it gives it kind of like a little boat shape to it. So once you have one of those trimmed, just position that right sides facing on the second panel with the batting there, and then you can go ahead and trim that so that they both match. So you should have two exterior panels with the rounded corners, and then you're going to need to cut out two like size interior panels with the same rounded corners. These roughly measure 10 by 5 inches, but it is best to just trace those exterior panels since we're piecing fabric, just in case your seam allowance is slightly different, then you're going to get a good fit. So what we want to do is go ahead and create an interior zipper pocket on one of those interior panels. This is an improvement to that original design, which just had an open interior. And so you're going to take two pieces of cotton fabric that are 5 inches by 10 inches and take the top and bottom edge of both long sides and press that over. And then you're going to sandwich your zipper in between those two edges that you have folded over and pin that in place. I had an 18-inch zipper that I got super cheap, and so I just trimmed that down, and then go ahead and stitch across there and attach that zipper to that pocket. I do not use a zipper foot. I just bump my needle position over, and generally for these interior pockets, 1 row of stitching is enough. I have a 2.5 inch by 10 inch strip of fabric that I'm going to use to frame out the top of that zipper tape there, and you just fold that in half, press it long ways, open that up and bring those raw edges inward to meet on that center press line, then fold that over one more time and press, and then you can sandwich that zipper tape right in between those top layers there. And that's what that looks like there. Go ahead and test your zipper and make sure that you don't have that fabric too close to the teeth, and then you can stitch down that to attach that top trim. And this time I'll just move the needle in towards the left, and that's what that looks like when it's attached. And so then you're going to position this pocket on that interior panel, and you are going to be overlapping those curved edges, which we will clean up after we attach the pocket. So get your pocket positioned on there. You need to come down at least 1 inch from that top edge. So you should have a fair amount of overhang there on the bottom. And so we are going to go ahead and just trim that up so that it matches that actual interior body panel. And I just use the rotary cutter and trim right around. You can use scissors if you're more comfortable with that. And then go ahead and get rid of that excess, and that's what your interior panel with the zipper pocket should look like. Now we're going to go ahead and stitch across the top edge of that zipper tape that we put on there, that zipper trim that we put on there, and don't forget to move your needle back to center if you adjusted that. Okay, and now my zipper pocket is attached. I like to test that zipper just one more time, and everything looks good. Now I'm just going to open up that zipper just a bit, and I'm going to go ahead and stitch on the far edge past those little stoppers there, just so the zipper will stay nice and straight. because when I sew around these exterior seams, I'm gonna need that zipper pull in just a bit so I don't accidentally strike it with the needle. And so now you can take your remaining interior panel and position that right side's facing on the zipper panel, and go ahead using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, stitch all the way around the sides and the base. And then once you make it all the way around and you are sure that you have captured all your layers in that, just go ahead and trim up that seam allowance. And that's what that looks like on the inside. This fabric is so pretty. Okay, then go ahead and remove any pins that you might have on the inside and fold that top edge over just barely a 1/4 inch. If you need, you can press that at the iron. It may press nicely with your thumbnail. I do not suggest using interfacing for this interior because it's going to get too bulky. If you did really want to use something, maybe Pella on 808 or 809 is best. And I want to add just a little bit of top stitching to these exterior panels. And so I'm just going to run 2 rows of stitching on either side of that short edge. And then I'm going to position these exterior panels right sides facing and use that same 3/8 of an inch seam allowance to zoom around the exterior edge and join those. And then once you make it all the way around, just verify that you have captured all the layers, and then go ahead and trim that seam allowance up as well. You're going to turn this panel right side out. So fun, it's just the cutest. And then take that top edge and fold it inward just about a 1/4 inch. And then before we insert the interior into this, you need to choose which is going to be your front and which is going to be the back. You're going to see more of the back because the flap is going to extend down over the front of this. So put your favorite side on the back of this. I'm going to install a magnetic snap closure. You're welcome to use any kind of closure you like. A press lock would be darling. Snaps are fine. Hook and loop tape is a great option too. And so I want to take this heavier part of that magnetic snap and mark center on this. And I just lay that little disc right down on there, and then I use a marker and I mark the area where those little slits should go just with a tiny little line. And then I use my seam ripper and really carefully I just break through that fabric and that quilt batting. And then I can fit those prongs inside of there. And then that disc just sits on top of those prongs, and then you can fold those prongs inward. And I like to use the end of the marker to do that too. It'll spare your fingers. And so now the magnetic snap is installed there, and you can give that a good push from the back, and then you're ready to fit the interior inside of there. So the zipper is going to go along that rear wall, and I began by just aligning those side seams first, and then once you get the side seams aligned, then you can reach in there and fit that well and use those exterior clips to hold the exterior and the interior. As long as your seam allowances were consistent, everything should line up beautifully. And you can see it does have plenty of body just with that one layer of quilt batting. It's a really great size. I love it so much. There's just enough room for the phone, maybe some lip gloss and your keys, a to-do list, and you are ready to go. So now what we're going to do is work on the flap, which is also going to be patchwork. And so you're going to need one interior panel that's a solid cut of fabric, and it measures 8.5 by 5 inches, and it is backed with quilt batting as well. And then we're going to have 3 patchwork pieces. One of them is 4 by 5, and 2 of them are 2.5 by 5. And so I'm just going to frame out that larger piece by positioning those smaller pieces right sides facing and joining those. Okay, and the interior lining that I cut for this is just slightly larger, and that is on purpose. So we're going to begin by lining just one edge of that patchwork panel up with one edge of that lining and batting, right sides facing, and go ahead and stitch down that. And then bring the other edge up to meet that short edge, so they're aligned, and stitch down that. And then go ahead and turn that right side out and give that a good press. Okay, and when you're pressing that, go ahead and take that bottom edge and turn it up in there about 1/2 inch, and then stagger that just slightly so a little bit of that lining fabric comes peeping out there from the bottom, and then you have a little bit of that lining fabric peeping out around the edge. And this extra layers there, it's about 4 layers around the edge, is going to stabilize that flap. So now what you want to do is top stitch all the way around this, and I'm just going to line the edge of my foot up with the edge of that fabric. And then just to add a little bit more accent, I'm going to come around that flap with a second row of stitching. I'm just going to bump over just a smidge. Okay, and that's what the flap looks like. Super duper cute. And here's what it's going to look like on the front of that. I do the same thing working on the underside of the flap above that stitching. I'm just going to find center there on that, and then position that disc right on top of that and just mark where I need those lines. And then I'm going to reach inside and make sure I cut through that layer of fabric and batting, but not the front. I'm just giving a little tiny cut in the fabric there, just enough to be able to fit that smaller portion of the magnetic snap. And I choose to put the smaller portion or the thinner portion in the top there because it doesn't weigh as much. And then once you get those prongs poked through the back there, then go ahead and fit that plate on there and fold those prongs inward. And then if needed, you can give it another press, and then go ahead and fit that magnetic snap, and then tuck the excess in along that back edge. And at this point you may have to switch to pins because the clips are going to get in your way. And this is what it looks like once everything is pinned in place. Oh, that's just so fun. I love, 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 love the patchwork pieces. Super duper cute. Okay, if you wanted to stop now, you could go ahead and stitch around the perimeter there and secure everything, and you'd be good to go. You'd have a cute little clutch that you could carry in hand. I want to go ahead and add a little wristlet strap to mine to add a bit more functionality to it. So that is a 2.5 inch by 16 inch piece of fabric. I did piece 2 pieces so I could use the fabric I wanted. Press that right side's facing and then just stitch down that raw long edge, and then either using a turning tool or a large safety pin there, go ahead and turn that right side out and then give that a really good press. Try to press my seam towards the center there, and then you're going to take a 10-inch long piece of 3/4 inch elastic, and you're going to thread that through that center channel there. And so you want that tube to kind of bunch up and frame that elastic. So once you get to your end there, hold on to that good so you don't have to go chase it around. And you just want a tiny bit of that elastic poking out at the end because you don't want to waste your stretch. Okay, and then give that a couple tugs so that that fabric comes around that like that. And then go ahead and line up both ends of the elastic and come in about 1/2 inch on that and stitch those together. And you can trim off some of that excess there. Not too much, just enough just to clean it up. And then give that a few more pulls so that that fabric spreads out nice. And then you can position this in between the interior and the exterior layers on either side that you want. It's going to come in between the flap and that side seam there, and there should be just enough room to fit that in there. Make sure you tuck it down in there about 1 inch so that you can reinforce it, and then pin that in place just like that. And I'll show you what that's gonna look like, and then you'll be able to put that right on your wrist like a scrunchie, and it stays put, but it is comfortable too because of the elastic. And now the next step is to stitch all the way around that perimeter. You're going to need to come very close to that top edge because we did not have a lot of excess on that turn. So just go nice and slow. I think it's easiest to remove the machine deck if you can for this, and start as close to that top edge as you can and at or near the beginning of the flap, and then just go all the way around. All right, and I made it all the way around, and that's what my little clutch looks like. I'm ready to go out and travel light. It's absolutely adorable. It's so fun. I just love that each piece is a one of a kind, and I have the ability to incorporate so many of my favorite prints in there. And then I love the addition of the zipper pocket, just in case I'd like to toss a few cards in there, a little bit of cash, or in today's world, perhaps even my mask, right? So I hope you enjoyed the project as well. It was an absolute pleasure to sew with you. Before I say goodbye, I just want to give you the finished measurements on this. It's about 9 inches by 4.5 inches, and then the contents will add a little bit of depth to that, but not much. And then just as a reminder, I am offering the design board for this for a nominal fee. You can find the link to purchase down in the notes. And I will be back next week with another fun tutorial. I think we're going to revisit my mini wallet. I have a fun idea for that. So you can look forward to that next Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Until then, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. I hope you all have a beautiful week.